connecting us to ancestors. Queen Nzinga, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, Stephen Biko. Connecting us to ancestors, struggles to progress, past to present, enlightenment to African cultural, spiritual space, gracing the cosmos, the universe with
Languages?
More 12 languages in Senegal.
What are they?
Huh?
What are they? Wolof?
Wolof, Serer, Jola, Soninke, Bambara, Bainuk, many languages in Senegal.
When I arrived in Senegal, I really felt like I was home. And I knew this resonance had nothing to do with this lifetime. I knew it had to do with my DNA, the ancestors, and what was passed down to me through epigenetics. I also knew about the door of no return, and I was adamant about not going to Goree Island because I went to Howard University, and we are required to know intimately the atrocities of the transatlantic slave trade. And I was over America's obsession with the slave narrative. I know who we are. We didn't begin with slavery. We began with the world, and we're certainly not ending in slavery of any kind. So I was set on not going. And as quickly as I said that, a voice came to me ever so eloquently and said, "It's not about you." And before I knew it, I was in the middle of an ocean, on a boat, on my way to Goree Island. When I reached Goree Island, I immediately got the download. This was about healing. This was an energetic return through my vessel and the power of that to return to a place where such horrendous and horrific crimes against humanity happened. Against us. Because we're still processing the trauma of that today. And sometimes before you can heal something, you have to return to where it all began, the scene of the crime. And sometimes the scene of the crime is home. And then I realized the privilege to be a part of this healing, this release, a release I didn't even know I needed until the emotion overtook me as soon as I reached the island. And then I'm like, wow, this really wasn't about me, the little me, the egoic me, but all that has contributed to my existence. And it's funny, when I took this trip, I had to take a leap of faith, like with all the trips I've taken for this project, because I didn't have money. And this is no exaggeration. I had 78 cents in my bank account the day before I boarded my flight to the continent. And I know because I found a video that said, "Tomorrow's the big day. I have 78 cents in my account." And I'm scared as shit. Talk about magic, Black imagination, alchemy. I manifested a consulting contract in the US while I was in Dakar. And those funds took me from Dakar to Amsterdam, and from Amsterdam to my 6th trip to Paris for this project. But there had to be something informing me this whole time, some sort of intelligence. And I believe it was my ancestors. But before that contract came, it was the support of family and friends that carried me to my arrival, and the people of Dakar that sustained me. The hospitality, the generosity, the gentleness of the people is unmatched. They hosted me, fed me, accepted me into their daily lives, trusted me to photograph them and to be in their intimate spaces. And I got to see firsthand the indestructible spirit of the African influence, not only on American culture, but on global culture. And to be able to commune and connect with them restored something in my soul with regard to humanity. I also have a new, profound, deep respect and appreciation for those that came before me, for what they endured, for what they transcended, and for what they created with nothing but their very essence and the legacy that they left behind, and the spirit and the strength and the resilience and the genius and the brilliance and the creativity. I mean, if we can take that, we can create a whole new world because they did. It's just that they didn't get to reap what they sowed, and others enjoyed the fruits of their labor and are still feasting on those fruits today. But that doesn't have to be the case for us.
Bonjour. Welcome to Paris. Here we go. A gift, cadeau.
Oh, merci.
Nice. I'm photographer on Paris.
Paris. Bonjour. What a magical place. One that romanticizes the senses. And it has so many different jewels, especially if you go off the beaten path. And one day I did that. And I'm walking and I turn the corner and I just see this slew of people who look like me hugging the block. And they were hustling. They were slanging beauty. They wanted you to come into the shops and get your hair and nails done. And the scene was so energetic and magnetic and lively. And I said, damn, we everywhere. And that's where the term was coined, right there in the streets of Paris. One of the things I love most about Paris is that they seem to have mastered the art of chilling and style and making everything look effortless. And they have a reverence for art, beauty, life. And it made me understand why Black artists back in the day fled to Paris and why Black artists today are still drawn to Paris. There's a certain freedom that you feel, and it makes you want to get in touch with your own je ne sais quoi. And so when they say Paris is always a good idea, that's not an overstatement. And that's probably why I return to that city more than any other city. One of my most memorable photographic experiences happened in Cuba. I was out shooting and the sun was going down. And I noticed a young boy on the Malecon. And I began to shoot him in all of his Black glory. He didn't notice me at first. When he eventually did notice me, he kind of just fell into pose. Sometimes when someone notices you, they may smile, or they may hide, or they may get angry. But he didn't do any of those things. He kind of just allowed me to photograph him. And as I moved my feet, it was like this dance within consciousness. It was so still and so beautiful. I'll never forget it. And I realized in moments like this of focusing and capturing, shooting, how vulnerable human beings are and how vulnerable Black lives are in America. Because just like I was capturing Black life in Cuba, in America, the police and what seems to be everybody else were taking Black life. But the thing about it is you really can't take Black life. And I really can't capture Black life. It's not something to be taken or captured. It's just not possible, even though it is attempted. But it was my response to the traumas I'd experienced in America, the heaviness, the grief, I remember when the Trayvon Martin verdict came in. It was the day before my birthday, July 13th, 2013. I was out celebrating when that verdict came in. And something in me turned. There was this dread. There was this sadness, powerlessness. But more than anything, there was anger. And I had nowhere to put that anger. And in retrospect, this is where I put it. I put it in my work. I alchemized that pain into beauty. We are living. We are thriving. We do matter. We can breathe, just as the divine had intended.
La negra tiene tumbado, black woman got swag.
Cartagena was amazing. I had never been to a foreign city that had so much Black art everywhere. In the town of Palenque, that's where you see I Love Being Black, Black Lives Matter, and to see that much pride and activism for Black life in a foreign city was incredible. And they are vigilant about preserving African culture and influence in Colombia. Other than saying that, I really enjoyed and was blessed by the experience. I mean, it was lit. There isn't much more I can say about this part of Colombia except go.
Me siento muy orgulloso.
He feel really proud for having black people visiting today.
Yes. Tenemos la misma lucha.
He said the same struggle out there. Wherever we go, we're still brothers.
The best part about having the privilege of doing this work is that I got to fulfill what one may call a utopian ideal. I mean, just existing shouldn't be considered that, but it is what it is. I got to create what I wanted to see in the world. Black bodies, Black beings, living life, interacting with the elements, enjoying their existence. That matters. Being fine, being divine, without the shadow of death and the toxicity of the myth of white supremacy and the darkness of racism. Now, the journey within the journey was my self-realization and my self-actualization through much deprivation. I had very limited resources this entire time, and also battling all sorts of traumas and addictions. But mainly the lack of resources. I had 78 cents before I boarded my flight to Dakar, $35 before I left for Bali. And maybe I had $200 in Cuba. And Paris, I never really had coin in Paris. But in not having anything tangible, I discovered the richness in the intangible, like self-trust and faith, grace, kindness, and divinity, sovereignty. I had to trust the universe inside of me. I was being taught that I'm enough. Despite my conditioning and programming, I am enough. And I believe what's true for me is what's true for everybody. We are enough, despite what we've been taught. And this was the true legacy of our ancestors. They tapped into that which you cannot see, their spirit. And it's all about faith, believing in your power, your desires, your ideas, and taking steps towards those ideals because it's connected to a bigger purpose. And what you have to do is trust the process. And I also learned that we don't have to try or strive to be excellent, but that we are already excellent. And this helps me keep my mind off of things like white privilege. That's not something that I need because I have something much more substantial. I have imagination, intelligence, creativity, strength, power and a spirit that transcends all of those things. I'm really grateful for the black skin that I manifested herein. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's like I hit the human jackpot. Cut the check. Cut the check.